We all have a story, and at times we feel we're walking it out alone. Let's pause and think. Join us for honest conversations about adoption and parenting as we lament, encourage, give hope, and explore our true identity and worth in Christ.
Hi, my name is Aixa. I'm all the way from Guatemala City in Central America, and we have a very special guest today in Pause and Think. We get to listen to amazing stories and hear adoptees and their heart. And so we really value that Cosette Eisenhower-Epp is here with us from Dallas. So welcome, Cosette, to Pause and Think. We are eager to get to know you. And will you please introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and just being willing to hear adoptees' stories and just the journey that we've been on. So, something about me, I'm 24 years old. I was adopted from China when I was 14 months old, and I've lived in the Dallas, Fort Worth area ever since. I am a transracial adoptee, and so my parents are both white. I'm Chinese, and I have an adopted brother who's not blood related with me, that's also adopted from China. I'm married. I've been married for a little bit of a year and a half, and I'm currently in grad school. So I finish school in August. So can't wait.
Wow, that is a lot. You have a lot on your plate.
Yes.
We are very thankful that you took time to have this conversation because we understand the heaviness and the importance of it. And so, even though we're going to casually chat, it means so much to us, and I know to you, to get more of your heart out there. So, we value that. So, you mentioned a couple of factors that, just stand out to me. The fact that it's a transracial adoption,
Yes.
it matters, and I would like for you to just unpack how that is a factor that you will never get to erase with adoption.
Yeah. So I think it's definitely one of those things growing up that I don't think I was aware of until I got older. And I think around college, my mom and I started talking more about it. Was that going in public, and like I was in cheer in high school and junior high. And so um, those were simple things that just singled out that I looked different than my parents, for like the father daughter dance that we had to do at the pep rallies, my mom being there and me going up to her. I didn't realize it at that time, but I was honestly embarrassed to be seen with them. More of the factor of I was just so emotionally done with having to talk about
Mm.
being adopted and looking different than my parents, and people asking me the questions that they want to ask an adoptee. And I'm just like, I'm just done with it. And so a lot of high school is very much of like those pep rallies, not going up to my mom because I was like, I'm just don't want the questions. But it's also in just like, and that's something like my mom and I, like we've talked about, we worked out together. We've both, um, I've like acknowledged it and realized that happened because in that time I didn't know about it. Um, and then it's also just, it's hard to be so singled out from your parents to where you don't, when you're walking down the street and stuff, like it doesn't look like you belong in your family.
Mm.
Especially if, I mean, for me, it's my brother and I that are both Chinese and my parents that are
Mm.
white. Growing up, we went to a restaurant one time and someone asked us if it was two checks because it was my brother and I on one side and my mom and dad on the other. And I think I just
Mm.
looked at them and I'm like, he's my brother. But then it was one of those looking at my parents and like, you're paying for this, right? Like, and so I think it's
Mm.
just, it's a battle that is just hard to win sometimes.
Mm.
Um, and I think too, as the world has changed, as more anti-racism has been on a rise, especially with COVID happening in
Mm.
2020, and the shooting that happened in Atlanta at the Atlanta spa. Those were really big points to where I was like, my parents created the conversation in our household
Mm-hmm.
of, okay, how does this make you feel? We can't understand it because we're not that ethnicity, but we want to sit here and listen and know, as people who aren't part of that community, like,
Mm-hmm.
what should we be, like, what things should we be aware of that we could do to help people
Yeah.
that are that ethnicity and culture. And so
That is huge. That
it
is
is.
huge on your parents' part. Just the fact that you feel free to just talk about these things leads me to believe that your parents have done a wonderful job in allowing you to have space to feel everything that comes with this.
Yeah.
Like, not only be grateful, be happy, be cheer, cheer that you're adopted and you're, all these things that are very much stereotyped and attached to adoption. I feel like your parents gave you permission even to encourage those conversations. And so that tells me you're, especially on the mom side. Now I'm adopted mom, and sometimes it can be a challenge to distance yourself and not take it personally. Like when they're going through those teen years and you say, I don't want to talk to my mom in public. It's not about her and how she's doing her job. It's about your internal turmoil
Yes.
and your exhaustion. And I think that's amazing that she actually acknowledged your ethnicity and the gap that there is.
Hmm.
So, wow,
Yeah.
that's
I'm really
amazing.
grateful that, and I think with how open my parents were about it, it really allowed me at a really young age to open up, start talking about
Mhm.
being adopted, um, talking about the struggles that I had with being adopted, and the emotional battles also.
Mhm.
And I think if my parents hadn't been that open with it, and it was more of adoption was more of a taboo subject in the household, I think there would be a lot more of internalizing everything and not being able to talk it out, not being able to
Mhm.
grieve the moments that grieving a biological parent is like warranted, like during Mother's Day, during Father's Day, during birthdays, things like that. Um, and I'm really grateful that my parents did give me the space during those moments and during those times to grieve that.
Uh-huh.
Because and always created a thing to where like they're still a part of it. And like my mom vocalizing like, hey, I know today's like a hard day. And like,
Hmm.
and that's okay. Like you're having to celebrate and you're grieving. Like you're celebrating, like I
Yes.
was celebrating my adoptive mom, but I was also then grieving my biological mom, and I was also in foster care in China. So then my foster mom as well. And
Wow.
so it's just things like that that's just a constant. It's one of those where it's like you sometimes you're so content and like you're like, okay, I've got this adoption stuff down. And then something happens and you're like, well, I thought I had it down. Maybe I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah. Well, grief is that way, isn't it? It's
It is.
like it comes in waves, as a very popular saying goes. And the fact that you mention that other loss, because adoptive parents tend to understand the loss of the first family better, especially the mother. But sometimes it just gets thrown in the background that there's other losses in your life,
Yes.
like the rest of that family. Where is it? And if you went through foster care, maybe that foster mom and dad and family. So there's a series of losses in our children's lives, and unless we're willing to walk with you guys, we will not get to bond the way
Hmm.
that we need to. Sometimes adoptive parents are very afraid, Cassette, to have these conversations. They are afraid they will unstabilize, like like everything will go Ari if I bring this up with my teen. What do you think?
I think if the parent never brings it up, the child feels like it's not a conversation that they're able to have in the house. I mean, let's take for instance, just like I'm trying to think of a scenario in my brain, but it's things like that where it's like if the parent is so expectant that their 13-year-old daughter or son is going to be, whenever they feel ready to talk about it, they'll be the ones to bring it up. But
Mm-hmm.
but if you never bring it up in the house whenever they're younger, then it just feels like, or it could feel like that um, that's just a conversation that shouldn't be had with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing other adoptees, like when it is that, then the children feel like there's the expectation of gratefulness, the expectation
Yes.
of I can't say anything because I don't want to let my parents down,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't want them to feel bad about this or
Mm-hmm.
XYZ. And so I think the taboos, like having the adoptee talk about it first, and then bringing it up for the first time, I think that is, it's not good, because then the child really does feel like it's on
Yeah,
them to bring it up.
exactly.
It's different if a parent is like, hey, do you want to talk about this, and the child's like, no, and doing that, because then the parent's
Mm-hmm.
giving the adoptee the autonomy to talk about if they're willing to,
Exactly.
versus the other.
Exactly. Like, just a quick reminder for parents watching, we are the leaders. We are the ones doing the proactive movement toward bringing this little life into our family tree. And so, as we are leading, we are expected to also open up those conversations and those safe spaces. What made you feel safe? Uh, uh, adding to your mother explicitly saying, how do you feel? What other attitudes in her and your dad made your house feel safe to talk about this?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is that I wasn't we joined like a group called Families with Children from China, North Texas, which is like a chapter
Wow.
um, in DFW, and then there's different chapters around the U.S. And it's just families with children that are adopted from China. And I think my family was a part of that. I think when I got adopted, maybe when I was 2. Um, and I think that was one of the biggest eye openers, that, okay, like my parents want me to see other people and talk with other people that have similar stories like me,
Mhm.
versus, and I know based off of demographics, where they live, the city they live in, they're just not able to do that.
Mhm.
But it's also, I think for me, one of the clear things of, okay, there's a reason why my parents are doing this. They're not just keeping me in an area with just people that look like them.
Mhm.
I'm also
Mhm.
able to see people that were also adopted that have similar stories. I grew up going to camps that were for adoptees. Some of them were just for
Oh,
Chinese adoptees, and
wow.
some were just adoptees, whether international or domestic adoptions.
Yeah.
And so I think seeing that
Mhm.
really opened the doors of like, okay, they're willing to talk about it, because if they're bringing me into these spaces, they know questions are going to get brought up. So,
Mhm. Yeah, that really is eloquent. The intentionality of the
yes.
spaces they were willing to step into with you guys. Um, and there's an aspect to the new identity, and it comes tied to the name. Like,
Yes.
names for adoptive families are a big deal. And when you're going through paperwork and depending on the area in the world that you're doing this, it can take a while. In our support group for Latin American adoptive families, there's quite a celebration when your papers actually finalize and your kid has your last name. It's like a very significant, beautiful
Mhm.
celebration that, you know, biological parents celebrate the moment the child is born, and you're, writing their name from the get-go, but it's a different process for us. How have you lived in this specific point about your name?
Yeah. So I like to say I technically have 3 names because in China, so I was in the orphanage for 3 months, and then I was in foster care for 11 months because I was a failure to thrive baby. And so with that, the name that I was given was the name that the orphanage gave me. And so the name that the orphanage gave me was Guo Li Ping. And so Guo is the surname, which just means country. And then Li, everyone that was brought into the Zhanjiang Social Welfare Institute was in 2001, all had Li. And then Ping was technically the individual name that each person got. So everyone that was brought into the orphanage in 2001 had Guo Li, and then it was blank.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, mine was Ping. And so my Chinese name is Guo Li Ping. And then when I got adopted, my parents put Li Ping as my middle name. So then it was Cosette Li Ping Eisenhower. And then now that I'm married, technically the name's Cosette Li Ping Eisenhower-Epp. But I personally just was not prepared for the little identity crisis that changing the name would be. And I think it was Guo Li Ping was a name that I just happened to get. It was just a chance of being just being brought to that orphanage in 2001, being born in 2001. And then Ping was probably just one of the characters just down the list, and that's what mine was. And then Cosette Li Ping Eisenhower, it's like, okay, like Cosette's the first like intentional name that was given to me. And then it was Li Ping, which brought in the Chinese culture and my Chinese ethnicity into my middle name. And then Eisenhower, which is my dad's last name. And so, or I guess, and my mom's last name. And then I just wasn't like, when you get married, you're like, oh, I'm so excited to change my last name. I was excited because I was going to have a shorter last name. Instead of Eisenhower, it was Epp. It was going from 10 letters to 3. And I didn't have to change my initials. So I was super duper excited. And then it came around to doing Social Security. And I was like, okay, like I'm just going to hyphenate, or not hyphenate. I was going to move Eisenhower to my middle name. So I was going to have 2 middle names. And I think that's where probably the identity crisis went. It had its downfall because in the US, or at least in Texas, I guess it's all of US, there's a character count for your middle name. You can only have 16 letters in your middle name. If I wanted Li Ping Eisenhower and a space, it was 17. And so I wasn't prepared for that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And like, you can ask my husband, you can ask my parents. Like there were some tears shed during that because I'm like, I didn't want to kind of feel like I was forgetting and like losing the adoptive parent last name aspect to it. So right now, Eisenhower-Epp is hyphenated. And I just wasn't ready for it, but I was really grateful that my husband was he was understanding with it. He wasn't like, oh, we're married, so you have to change your last name now, or we're not married, or things like that. He was like, no, like take your time on it. Like that's something I don't think he realized was going to be difficult either for me. And then it sparked conversation of like, okay. And I think too, is like, I don't want to have a different last name than my kids. And so it's just all those things where it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't realize. It's one of those things where you
Mm.
think you're done with like and being so content with being adopted, and then something like this happens and you're like, oh, because I had never heard of anyone else struggle with that before. And
Wow.
so I was like, is this just something that's kind of wrong with me with being adopted? Like, I've never heard of anyone else
Yeah.
vocalize it before. And so with that, I just felt so alone with the
Mm.
grief and the mini identity crisis that it
Yeah.
brought to change last name after getting married.
And I thank you for voicing it because I'm certain you're not alone. And many may find your words very comforting. Like, yeah, I'm not crazy. This is a very real dilemma.
Yes.
We understand the value of a name, the protection it brought to your life, the new chapter of your life. And
Mm-hmm.
so I find it very beautiful that the process of attaching is very evident in the way that you love your parents' name.
Yeah.
And that's a very beautiful attitude in honoring that. So, and I also kudos to your husband because he
Right.
has been, yes, I pray for my kids, spouses all the time. And this is a kind of delicate handling of their hearts that I pray the Lord provides in their life. Because it's a very nuanced, it's very particular. It's very specific. It's very little. You didn't even expect it. You didn't
Right.
expect
I had
it.
no idea.
So this is a kind of curve that adoption throws your way. And we're just finishing up a little. Although I would love to have you on again to keep chatting. I think we can chat so much. But one last tough question would be, um, what would you say to moms specifically, um, fearing that if I bring up my children's origin, it'll displace me? Like maybe they think that your love for your origin and your biological mom sort of displaces the love that you have for your new family.
Hmm.
What would you say to parents?
I think that there's a saying of the mother's love that the more children they have, their love can also multiply. And I think that's also the same for the adoptee. I think
Mm.
the way that I see it always has been I have three moms and I have four dads because I also count the
Mm.
Heavenly Father as my dad. And so
Amen.
um, I'm like, with all of that, I'm like, that's three sets of parents, and then God with all of that. And I'm like, I love them all. I spent different
Mm.
times with all of them. I mean, with my biological parents, I spent 2 days with them. I was 2 days old when I was left at a hospital. And so, but with that, I had to work through it. Like, I still had the grief. I had to forgive them for that. But just because as the adoptive mom, like, you're bringing in that culture, you're
Mhm.
embracing their culture. You're showing them that you're not scared of that child's culture, and like, you're embracing it with them. It's a learning process for both of you guys, despite if the child's adopted at like an older age versus a younger age. It's important
Mhm.
for them to still have the culture in their life, because when you think about it in the long run of things, like when they go off to college or they go off to high school or they're an adult, people aren't going to stop them and be like, hey, so are you adopted by people that don't look like you? No one's going to
Mhm.
say that. And so it's super important for the parent to embrace the culture, because as a child, they also will understand, like, okay, my parents aren't ashamed of my culture. Like, they want to
Mhm.
embrace it as well. And so that child from there can also decide whether or not they want to embrace it, or if they don't. I know adoptees that do embrace their birth culture, but I also know adoptees that just aren't ready to yet. And so, but as a parent or as a mom, like, bringing it to the child, it shows a lot that you're
Mhm.
wanting and willing talk about it, you're willing to show them their culture, and you're not hiding it from them. You're showing and acknowledging that they had a life before you adopted them. Because for me, I had 14 months of my life that my parents never got to see or witness. And it's so important that the parents also acknowledge that, because that's also true with it.
So you would say there's space and actually possibility for you to love and yearn and hurt for your
Yes.
family of origin while being grateful and love your new family.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cassette, for taking your time and opening your heart. I do pray many find this helpful. And you're just beginning your story. So I'm eager to see what the Lord does with your life and through your kind disposition and open hands. So thank you. Thank you for
Yes.
being here with us and pause and think. And we want you to be here again. So talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Pause and Think. For more resources and information, go to whosami.org.